Welcome everyone to the Helm Dev Call for Thursday, January 16th, 2020. We're going to go ahead and get started. There's just the normal, if this is your first time in the call or you're watching this afterwards, the way this works is we go through a couple, any announcements that are available, then we go through stand-ups for all the core maintainers, and then anyone from the community who has anything to report, and then we go into discussion items. We have quite a few discussion items today, so we're going to go ahead and get started and get through announcements and stand up as quick as possible. I don't have any announcements listed on the agenda. Are there any from the group that we have missed? Okay. If you are coming to this after, we did do a Helm maintainers conversation for the CNCF webinar. That recording is now available online and has some useful information if you're curious about various things of Helm 3 and some of the process around it and migration. It's all on there. So let's go ahead and get going to stand up. I'll pass it off to Fisher to start off.
Nothing this week that I have to report. The only thing that I did was the CNCF webinar with Bridget, Taylor, Matt Butcher, and Karen as well. So there was that CNCF webinar, but otherwise nothing else to report on my end. Pass off to Mark.
Did you say Mark or Martin?
To Mark.
Okay, thank you. Working on completion. I have a big patch posted. Matt Farina actually put it as a discussion topic, so we'll wait for that. To help with testing, because I'm having to run a lot of tests because of the many changes, I was discussing with Matt Fisher about working with the memory driver, and I was hoping to kind of preload it with something. And I'm going to post a PR about that. What I wanted to ask here is the memory driver does not handle namespaces. So it wouldn't be very hard to make it happen. I'm worried about API compatibility. Is the memory driver an API?
Kind of. Because it is a public API, I think other consumers might be using it as like a test bed, but I think that's the only case where it's actually being used. It's not being used in a production service, but it would be a breaking API.
So from a programming perspective, we should try to keep it stable. From a behavior perspective,
if it can be argued that the behavior is a bug, then we can change it. And that's the one thing where we say incompatibility is that unless it's a game-breaking bug or something that a case hasn't been handled before, then we can make those changes. We try to avoid them as best as possible, but if there's something like the behavior is inconsistent between storage drivers, then that can be considered something that we can make that change and say we're fixing it to align with the others.
We can add methods. We just can't alter existing method signatures or remove methods.
Yeah, what I'm concerned about is if I introduce the namespace limitation or concept, then scripts that do let's say a Helm list with a namespace, they would behave differently because suddenly we would consider the namespace. And it clearly the existing tests don't make use of it, or else they would have not worked. So it would be so I'm not sure if that's allowed or not. If not,
yeah, if you want to work on something perhaps, and then we can take a look and review that particular PR, then we can go through that together and see what might be a possible solution there.
Perfect.
Yeah, my guess is that this is an oversight and is probably a bug because we should have switched everything over to use namespaces at 3.0, but the memory one has kind of languished since the very early days of Helm 2. So there might be good rationale for treating this as a bug that the memory driver does not have namespace support, while we stated publicly that Helm 3 was now fully namespace aware when it comes to releases. So,
okay, I'll work on something and post. Thank you. Off to Mr. Butcher.
Okay, so my main stuff other than the webinar we did has been working on trying to get us closer to graduation. So I have been working with Matt Farina accumulating stuff, and now I just need to start working on a slide presentation for it. And I've done a little bit of issue queue triaging and trying to follow up on that odd discovery bug that there's still an outstanding PR for, even though we don't know if it's solving a problem yet. So that's about it for me. I will pass it on to the last Matt who hasn't gone yet.
All right. So this week, it was mostly reviews and triaging of things, including the Helm Hub and Helm itself. That's it. So with that, who else is not gone? Bridget, I'll pass it to you.
Okay. I feel like every time I say or hear the word webinar, it becomes like a weirder word, but I did participate in said webinar and that was exciting. And other than that, I've been, down the rabbit hole on SMI stuff this week. So I have not been so Helm focused, though I am hoping to get, exactly, say it like monorail, dancing with the Simpsons, and it's wonderful. So I'm again, like meta focus right now is doc stuff and just going through and trying things and seeing if the doc surprises. And Taylor.
I'll do it last. Just we have, I think, Martin and Jacob, which I think said they're okay, but I want to make sure we do one.
Sorry.
Okay, not a bother. Thanks. So I've been looking at a few things this week. We got back to the Linux on S390X, which got put over to me. More to do with who I work for than who I am. But there's somebody was on to me about it, and they're just wondering, can they hook it in as a particular test platform in the CI system, and what is required of them if they want to do that, or is it something we want to do? So just putting that out there, what do people think, or do we want to wait for the discussion on that?
Let's wait for discussions. We can just get through the rest of stand-up.
Yeah, there's two other things as well, which I'll bring up in the discussion that I've been looking at as well, around the deprecated APIs in K8S 1.16, and some of the problems it's causing for customers who haven't upgraded those particular APIs before they moved to 1.16. So that's one kind of production issue that's coming around the whole time. And how better can we help people on this than this? Because I know it's not exactly Helm's fault, but how do we deal with it? And also around to failed deployments and stuff like that. And I know Matt Fisher's been trying to give, has been giving answers on that, but is there a way we can help a bit more on that, or can we put announcements out or whatever? As well as that, I was looking at the port renderer from Taylor. So he gave me $100. So I think it's a great proposal, by the way. No, I'm only joking. So yeah, I went through it, and I like the concept of it, because there's been a lot of talk around engines and having been able to plug and play engines and around the renderer. So I think the renderer it looks really good. I played with it as well, and it works. Yeah, just looking forward to once we say the WIP is gone on the changes to go and hook into it. And I think there'll probably be good uptake on that, because we've got a lot of questions on after the talk and stuff around this area, and people seem to love overlays. So yeah, I think that's great. To just finish up then, I was doing PR reviews and some bug triaging, and then also went back on some older type bugs that I have and tried to push them along as well. So that's all for me. So I'll hand back to Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And Jacob, are you sure you didn't have anything to say? Just wanted to make sure we don't leave you out if you did have something to say, even though you said no stand-up.
Yep, all good.
Okay, awesome. So my stand-up, I haven't been doing a lot of PR reviews and stuff, and I'll explain that in my next point. I did do the webinar, and I've been working on the post render. I'm feeling pretty confident that it's at a good spot. There's a few feedback items from community members I just want to make sure I address with them as well. And then I'm working on a lot of talks that are either adjacent to or dealing with directly to Helm. So I've been doing a lot of writing, and that's why I haven't been doing PRs. So I'm doing one with the Martin config management camp, and then I'm doing one actually in Spanish at a DevOps Days Guadalajara. I'm going to do a review of the Helm 3 like development and release process, and what went well and what didn't go well, and kind of talk about how that can be applied to people's software things. So anyway, that's going to be really interesting. I'm kind of excited to go give it in Spanish. But yeah, those are kind of what I'm working on. So if you need me directly on specific PRs, please make sure to just ping me. I don't want to leave anybody hanging, but I'm trying not to take on too much of those while I finish writing all this stuff. So that is what I am doing right now. And I think with that, we can move on to the discussion items. First on the list is the auto-completion rewritten in Go from Farina.
So this is a big one, and I like that Mark's doing it because it makes the auto-completion, we can all more easily write it. Like every time I have to touch auto-completion, I have to go refresh my bash and ZSH skills and all this stuff, and it's absolutely horrible. But this makes it acceptable, and it also means we can remove kube control as a dependency because we can handle the logic inside of Helm that was handled there before. So this is my call of request because this is a double XL in size. Mostly because it just touches so many files and so many little things that I ask folks to come take a look at it. Please, if you're interested in auto-completion, take some time and review it. It's hard to get these big ones reviewed. Please take some time on this.
Yeah, this was on my to-do list to get started on reviewing this, so I can get started on that today. I noticed that Mark has he dropped off the call, likely to a connection issue, but yeah, I will be taking a look at this later today.
Okay.
So there's at least one reviewer.
That's good. I plan on reviewing it too, and I've already done some reviewing and given feedback and helped him with some complimentary PRs to get tests fixed, things like that, to get this moving along. And I think it's ready that I can jump on it and do more reviewing now.
Okay, I just threw it on the 3.1 milestone, so now that we know that we have at least 2 reviewers looking at it, so we can push this one through and review it through.
Great. That's it. There's a lot of topics, so I'll move on.
Okay, thanks, Farina. The next one is from Mark, who, like as we said, I think is having some communication problems about the version on master that unreleased is not being added. Does anyone know more about that? Could speak to it?
No, unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure what that one is. So we can come back to that one once he comes back online.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Next one is the handling CRD ingress resources from Farina, it looks like.
This was not me who added it on here. I just commented on it last May, which means I have no recollection because it was more than 6 months ago. I don't know how this got on here.
Okay, well,
I'm trying to see. So last week there were 2 things.
Sorry,
No, this was not related. So last week there was a couple of items that we couldn't address. So I thought this was one of them, but no, I don't have any recollection of this one either.
Which one is it? Sorry, I just
it's
dropped off.
the CRD ingress resources.
Yeah, I threw that on. More a case to ask Matt, how do we want to bring that on, or is that kind of as much of an answer we can give around the CRD ingress?
I really don't know. CRDs are still a mess, and we got to figure them out. And I haven't had time to tackle it. We almost need some people with good time to just carve out a good chunk of time to gather lots of information, document it, think it through, bring up suggestions. And I won't have that time this month.
Okay, sure.
Hey, Mark, I see you're back. We are going to come back to yours right now. The one about the version on master about unreleased not being added. Can you give us some more information on that?
Oh, it's just I wanted to post a question or an issue, and when I wanted to post the version so you guys know it would be off master, it just said 3.0 or 3. Yeah, I think it just said 3.0. So I expected it when I do a Helm version of the master branch, I expected it to say 3.0 unreleased like it used to.
Yeah, so I actually, now I remember what this was bringing up. So before Helm 3 was released, we, being Adam, I guess, and then also me reviewing, playing around with it, we kind of refactored the internal version packaging to produce some metadata and whatnot. And one of the things that was hard-coded in the internal package metadata was the string unreleased. So when we had to release Helm 3.0, we had to remove that, or else we get version 3.00 plus unreleased on the actual stable release. That being said, You do bring up a fantastic point, actually, about if someone's building off master right now, it will show version 3.00. It could be in a clean state when they're installing it, but it's not marked as something that wasn't built off a tag. So I think if in the make file, there is a way, like on the git tag, we inject metadata from the tag itself into the version. I'm fairly certain that we could add back the unreleased metadata on the makefile compile whenever it's not being built from a tag and add that unreleased metadata tag back. So it shouldn't be too difficult to add that. So that way we can differentiate between what's been built off of a branch versus what's been built off of a tag. That's what you're trying to get to, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I just wanted to know what you guys wanted. Maybe it was willingly that it was 3.0. I'm not sure.
I think no, I think it was just we were trying to get the release out, and that was what was available. But that was a fail on my part to open an issue to say that we should add that back. So maybe I think the first action item would be to open up an issue, which I can do to fix that up. But then if you want to work on that, or someone else is interested in getting that in, that would be fantastic.
I'm not attached to it, but if nobody else jumps on it, I can try to find time.
Okay. I think I know exactly the point is, so I can take a look at that today as well.
If you don't mind, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I accidentally clicked right off of the window when I tried to click unmute. Next up on the topic list, we have from Scott, who is not here, but the question I think we can answer. It says the community charts Helm 3 backwards compatibility is complete to the best of their knowledge. Does anyone else know of any other issues that have come up that aren't listed here, which he has I'm copying the link for people and dropping in the chat. So are there any other issues that have come up for people, or are things looking like backwards compatibility is in place and working?
Looking at the list here, those seem like the usual suspects that I've seen on the Helm 3.0 issue queue. I don't see any others from the stable list that others have reported issues with as they were migrating over to Helm 3. So I think this is a pretty concise, or this is a pretty comprehensive issue list.
Okay, then I think we're probably good. We can drop that in there in the notes, and I think we'll just have Scott follow up on it. The last three things are all from Martin, so I'll just let him introduce them, starting up with the Linux S390X as a CI platform.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my question around that is the hooks are put in for tests, and the person that did it contacted me and said they would like to hook up a particular test platform, and do we want to hook it into the CI pipeline? So that's the question. And if we do, what do we need to do or help them with?
How would we hook it in? So that way on each CI run, we can see the results of S390X.
Yeah.
Like, how would it work?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I don't know myself how that work, or can you make that work?
What are so is anybody familiar with GitHub Actions? If I remember right, Actions can have custom executor somewhere. Is that right?
That rings a bell.
I think so. Yeah, I think I've heard about that. I haven't done it myself.
Yeah, so there's a way to do custom executors. That's probably the suggestion that I would have, is see if we could leverage that. Though I haven't done it. They're called self-hosted runners. And I don't know if we could use some GitHub hosted and some self-hosted. And if a self-hosted runner could be running on it, that's like the route I would look at, Martin, because that might be the simplest for us and everyone.
I wonder, do we need to have this automated, or if we'll say the people that are willing to provide the resources and do the testing on it, do we leave it like that? because as such, our automated tests only test on Linux 64 at the moment. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the argument can be made that in previous versions of Helm, like say, well, in Helm 2, there was the ARM architecture, which is basically used for anyone who is interested in Raspberry Pi and experimentation in that scenario. And that was hosted by a third-party community project. It was completely untested by us, but we relied on the community to test that and make sure that everything worked on that architecture, but without any official support coming from us, in a sense. So I'm wondering if it, like, the S390X architecture being tested in there would always be fantastic, but I'm wondering if we could lean on the side of, if there are a small subset of community members interested in this thing without having any of the core maintainers with any knowledge of the S390X architecture and any kind of problems that we might run into there, is it just safe for us to say we can release that with the caveat that it's up to the community to fix and find those bugs? And to me, I think that sounds like a pretty lenient response to say that we can release S390X releases. We don't actually say that we officially support it because we aren't familiar with the architecture, but the community is more than welcome to take on that architecture and the testing for that if they wish.
Yeah, I suppose it's, as we put the hooks in for building for other platforms, some of the test hooks are in there as well for testing. So I don't, like, as you say, we're not hooked up automatically for any of the rest of them. So I suppose if people agree on that, I can't see a problem with that either. And then if I get back to the person and say, look, we can push in your PR and you can test from there, and the onus is on you to test in our people in your community.
Yeah, and that exact same argument can also be made for the PowerPC architecture, which we also have. So I think it's already in Helm 3 right now, the PPC 64LE chip architecture, which is PowerPC, if I understand.
Mm-hmm. Butcher, what do you think? Because you had some input on it as well the last time when we discussed it.
I mean, for the most part, I agree with everything Fisher said. I'm just, the problem with adding new architectures is always just we have no way of guaranteeing reliability on architectures that none of the core maintainers can access. That, to me, is the bottom line. And that's about all I got. I mean,
we can just clearly document that these ones are community supported rather than the core team supported, and just write that up in clear documentation. So it's documented to try to avoid the confusion, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's a good idea.
I'm all for that, and would be happy moving other items in there under that as well, ones that crept in over time.
Sure. Yeah, because probably the only ones we can say is whatever we've tested on, or is automatically tested, because otherwise it's you can't say it then. So yeah, I'll respond in the person of the PR, and I will do a doc then to support that.
Quick time check here, really quick. We're at 2 minutes till the hour, and I have to drop off pretty much right at the top of the hour. We should probably get moderator and notes assigned really quick, and then people can stay on to keep discussing, and I'll pass off the host to somebody. So anyone like to do moderator next week?
I think a couple of us at least are going to be out of the office for the all hands at Microsoft.
Yeah, that's including me.
Yeah.
I can moderate next week.
Anyone like to take notes?
I can do notes.
Okay. Awesome. Then I'll pass it back to you, Martin, to keep going.
Okay, so yeah, I'll just do one more because I have to drop myself as well. The one that I really want to bring up is, and I've lost my train of thought, is, yeah, around and I'd like kind of Fisher's input on this as well, because he's been responding quite a bit. Around the deprecated APIs, this is kind of going to be a big issue for people in production, where they have their Helm charts deployed, and maybe the chart that they used had the older API, for example, extensions, the beta, and then they just upgrade to the cluster to 16. They're kind of in a pickle, you know, and I can understand that if they're not, you know, if it's customers and they're hosting it, there isn't a lot they can do. They can't really delete the releases and reinstall. I just wonder. No, I know there's a community member, and he has said that he might work on a plugin for this. I did point him to, when he reached out to me, I pointed him to the 2 to 3 plugin, because there's some code he could pull out of that, because really you're down to a mapping really here, where you can come in and you can map basically the manifest so it can go through. Now, I spent a few hours going through the code, and probably you know anyway, Fishers, there is no nice incision point inside the code where we could do a map on the fly. You'd be doing something ugly where you're trying to go through the string and map across the string, which is lovely in a script once it's outside of the core code, but you really don't want to bring this into the core code. So I might work with the guy Rick and see how he gets on with the plugin. And maybe I'd put something into the docs around, saying to people before you upgrade maybe your clusters to think about upgrading upgrading the charts or whatever. But I think we need to put something around it, because it is a really a sticky wicket for people in production.
Yeah, for sure. That is one of the most clearly defined use cases where it's interesting that some objects have to be converted. So I think that one we can definitely take a look at. There are some other cases that have been raised in those issues that I'm not entirely certain how we could address those. Like people who are migrating from one chart that has an older API to a newer API version. Those cases, it's still unclear how we could actually do the migration. But that one where the Kubernetes cluster itself upgrades the objects under the covers for you when you upgrade from 115 to 116, some kind of migration strategy for that, and doing the schema migration for the release objects so they can continue upgrading is a good option, I guess.
And one note I'd like to say for chart maintainers, and they're probably on the ball with this anyway, and Matt Farina, you might know, is have all the charts or have people follow that and try to, has there been a strategy out in the community to upgrade the particular API versions?
I don't know.
Okay. Sorry, Matt, I seem to be throwing kind of curveballs.
And that's fine. I don't know, but I think that upgrade process, I mean, logistically we'll eventually get it to it as we get V2s of APIs and things like that, because there's been talk of that. And we've still got more things coming out, like what happens when Ingress comes out of V1 Beta 1 and becomes V1, right? That's coming. That's in the plan. People should be able to use Helm upgrade and just have things work. Should be, without going down, because that's the practical thing that people are going to want. If we can find a way to do that, it would be terrific, because otherwise everybody's got to kind of hack around and get frustrated and angry that upgrades aren't smooth. And it's a real problem in production. Yeah.
So you're saying you think in the medium long term, we need to get a solution into the product?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I would agree with that too.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I keep in my mind. Yeah, it's not going to be pretty though, but maybe something good will come out of it.
I'm wondering if the official recommendation shouldn't be something more along the lines of replace instead of mess up the thing that currently works. I'm just spitballing here, but it's upgrading hope is kind of a terrifying choice in a world where people theoretically could spin up more infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, it's kind of, I think it's more of on our end to figure out from what Kubernetes' stance is on these objects, if they have a migration strategy that is not straight up delete and replace. Because in that 115 to 1.16, they changed the resources without doing any downtime necessarily. Well, you can consider an upgrade being kind of a downtime on the nodes, but they somehow have a migration strategy in some scenarios. So I'm curious to see what's Kubernetes' strategy for handling API version upgrades. And like Matt Farina mentioned, this is not an off case where it just happens once. This is going to happen as well with Ingress and potentially with workloads having a newer version bump at some time in the future too.
Yeah, they do. Like when you do upgrade the worker node, all right, I presume it brings it down because when it comes back up, the deployment comes back up nicely and it's got the new API version on it. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on this batch channel anyway. We'll eventually get there on it.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep a look on.
Yeah, sure. That's all for me. I can leave the other thing for today. I might hit out with Fisher on that at some stage.
Okay. All right. So Taylor has granted me moderator permissions. So if that is all for discussion items, I think then we can close it out for today. See you guys all next week.
Bye.
Bye.